mitigate this. But one of the studies I was looking at today, it had surveys from African American women who were quote unquote middle class, and how they realized that they have to dress a certain way and act a certain way and talk a certain way in order to go into a physician's office and tell them I have this particular problem and be taken seriously. One of the other pieces of research that I realized was going on was that when an African American woman goes into a physician's office and says, let's just use back pain. I'm having some back pain. This happened to me 2 weeks ago. I had an accident. The physician is less likely to prescribe medications that can help with the pain. But if a Caucasian person goes into a physician's office and states the exact same problem, they are prescribed medications. The reason is because there is an overall view that African American women, African American people in general, will abuse opioids, and so they don't give them to them. So they don't get the treatment that is necessary, and they don't get the same treatment that Caucasians get, when overall Caucasians abuse opioids more than African Americans. And that's just crazy.
That is crazy. So wow.
I had a question, or one of our listeners wanted to know, was the lady that made that comment, was she African American or was she white?
If we're talking about the provider, she was white.
So let me ask you this. So do you think that some of the providers need a dose of cultural unawareness as well?
They actually very much do, but that's not what we do. There is a culture among providers where they think that they can't be taught anything. They're MDs. They know what they're talking about, and nobody can teach them anything else. And I experienced that in my profession and in my job where I am now. To be honest, I've been very blessed to be an African American woman and be experienced in dementia and memory care. And where I work now, they actually listen to me because they know nothing about dementia and how to handle people with dementia and how to handle caregivers with that are dealing with participants with dementia. But overall, they don't want to be taught. They think they don't need to be taught. They think they know everything already. And there is nothing that is set in stone that is happening now that provides them with the education that they need. Right now, we have 5 providers in the job that I work at, and none of them are African American. We have no African American nurses, and we have 1 African American social worker. So I work with an interdisciplinary team, and there are
out of how many people?
Story. We have 200, and right now we have 245 participants. 45% of them have dementia. About 43% of them are African American. And so being able to see a provider or a nurse or a social worker that is African American that can automatically understand what you're going through is an issue in our communities right now.
So
I don't know how to fix it.
Sure. So in essence, what you're saying is that there's a couple of things that are facing African American women. Number one, I guess if we'll call it the stereotype that the superwoman, the super African American woman, can pretty much handle everything. She can take care of a sick child, a philandering husband, or whatever the case may be, but she can handle it. And so from that perception, the care that African American women in particular receive, it's almost like suck it up, or she can handle the pain. So we don't really need to give her the care and due diligence that we would give other people because she's a superwoman. Is that what you're saying? Exactly.
She doesn't get referred to mental health if she needs it. She doesn't get referred to social work if she needs it. She just does not get referred the same way a Caucasian person would get referred to the services that they need. In particular, behavioral health, and in particular when it comes to Alzheimer's disease. I mean, I could do a whole podcast about Alzheimer's disease in the African American community. They just don't get the services that they need. They don't get referred. And
now,
I don't know if this
is that because of the Superwoman logo, or is that because there are some underlying prejudices in the discipline?
I think it's both. I think overall, many African American women will not say, this is what I really need, because I think that I'm supposed to be able to handle it all. And then when we do say, yes, this is what we need, the perception is maybe you don't really need it. You're going to abuse it if you get it. And so maybe you don't really need it. So they don't get referred to the services that they really need. So it's dual. Wow.
Well, first off, let me make sure that we let our listeners know that you can call in and chat with us at 240-508-8095. That's 240-508-8095. We definitely want to hear from anyone, particularly our ladies that are listening, if you have experienced any of this. And my next question is, from your research, what area is most prevalent in terms of services that Black women are not getting? Is it the physical stuff? Is it the mental support? What is number one on the list? I know there's a list, but what's number one?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure what the number one is, because it is across the board. It is mental health. It is physical. It is Alzheimer's disease. It is everything. I don't think there is one thing that tops another. I more than likely, I would probably say, if I just had to choose something, it would be mental health.
Wow. And again, that's because of the Superwoman complex. And you know, many of us have heard throughout our travels that, you know, there's nothing stronger in the world than the Black woman. And we look back historically, the things that Black women have had to deal with in terms of, you know, slavery. They were raising families. Not only were they raising their families, but they were raising the master's family. They were breastfeeding their children, doing all the things that they needed to do to survive, and then leaving there and going and being mama to their family. And as we move historically through time, even if you look at the freedom movement in the 60s and in the 50s, where the maids were actually walking 5 and 6 miles to work, you know, to support the bus boycott, and still going home and being mom and making sure the homework was done and making sure they were being good wives and members of the usher board on Sunday and so forth. So historically, Black women have shown that they are very resilient. And I agree with you. I think that it's sort of translated into, well, they can handle it. You know, if you have some bad news, just tell them they can handle it. Or if there's a procedure that is a little painful, don't worry about the anesthesia. They can handle it. She's tough. And so it's almost become a two-headed coin for African American women because of the things that they have dealt with over the years, and dealt with it like no one else could. And now it's sort of come full circle, and now they are not receiving the support that they richly deserve and that they need. That's what I'm hearing.
Seems like it's backfiring.
So just to tell you a personal story of my own, I'm not saying that I don't suffer from the same issues. So I was having a medical issue. I have 5 children, and I was working full time, and at the time going to school. So I was having this medical female issue, and it was causing me to double over every 5 minutes in pain. But what did I do? I got up, I went to work. I didn't tell anybody about my issues, and I was doubling over in pain trying to work. And so when people would come to me and say, well, what is going on? What's wrong with you? I was like, I'm going to be fine. Because in my mind, I needed to be the one to handle everything, and I needed to go to work, and I needed to get a paycheck, and I needed to do what I needed to do for my family, and that was it. And to the point where I couldn't even stand up or sit down in a chair. And finally, I had to say, after going a week like this, I've got to go do something.
Wow.
Because I can't continue like this.
Wow.
And it ended up that I ended up having to have a hysterectomy because of it. But that thought process that I need to handle it all and I can't ask for assistance was ingrained in me. And during school and this research, I realized that I was the same product of what I was researching.
Wow.
Yeah. No, that's, and that's something that's something that there are a lot of, sisters doing some good work in this area. Vernell, you look like you're going to be adding your name to that list. But there's also Dr. Monte Allen, who is a social epidemiologist. That's a lot of syllables, but essentially what she does is how the way we live affects our health. Essentially, the where we live, the neighborhoods, what we have access to, what we don't have access to, and she's an associate professor at community health sciences and epidemiology at UC Berkeley, and she's done a lot of work in that area. And some of the things that she talks about or that they talk about is this whole idea of what they call a Superwoman schema, and how it reflects the gendered racial socialization that African American women receive early in life and throughout their life course. So, to your point, Vernell, like this is what you've known, I've got to push through. And you get up and you go and you do what has to be done because you got to take care of everybody who needs to be taken care of. And if it falls on your back, well, that's just the way it is, and a lot of times it's generational. My mother, you saw your mother do it, she saw her mother do it, and it's just the way that it's always been. So you don't really know it, you're just doing what you know. Or what you think you got to do. And no one is rushing to help. I mean, we see the same thing in, and where it becomes a problem. On the one hand, you do it because you kind of push back, you got to be strong because you push back all of the crap that you have to deal with, all the microaggressions and everything else that we deal with as Black folk in America in particular. And you just kind of push through. So in that regard, the Superwoman thing kind of helps steal you from having to deal with that in the same, or kind of is a kind of defense mechanism in that way. But then it also gives off some, then there's a fine line between the Superwoman and the angry Black woman.
Exactly.
Then you got that issue that you got to deal with because you got to be confident and all of that stuff. But then, like, what does it mean if one of the questions that I saw in some of the research that they were talking about, when they were talking about the strong Black women it's kind of an armor that you wear, but it's also a liability. For example, someone said, what does it mean to continue to have an intense motivation to succeed while you're also experiencing barriers to achieving that success? How do you, it seems to nullify. It's like banging your head against the wall because it feels so good when you stop. It's like, right. What kind of say, how does that work for you? What is it that you do? But we talk about, one of my phrases is our greatest strength is our greatest weakness. And the greatest strength of the Black woman is that she can endure a lot, but we don't really accept the toll that it takes on our families, that it takes on ourselves, and how it affects our communities as well. I mean, in that particular scenario that I gave for my personal situation, I mean, if I have stopped and said in the beginning, okay, I'm having an issue, I need to go to see a physician and figure out what's going on, I wouldn't have had to
have the effects of how it affected my family, which was, you know,